Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next Foreman community demo. Welcome to 2019, even. It's good to be back after the break. Obviously, that's pushed the demo out by a week, but that's life. Not much we can do about it. But apart from that, we are glad to be back. We are happy to be getting back into the swing of things. There's lots coming up. There's lots to talk about. And so we're going to get on with that in just a sec. I'll give you the usual talk. So if you want to get involved, then you can come and chat with us on IRC on #theforeman, or you can use the YouTube live chat, and I will monitor both of those for questions. Do up the quality. YouTube is better than it used to be at this, but quite often you'll still get a default low quality stream, which can make some of the presenters screen sharing hard to read. So do try and up that quality if you can. And that's about it, really. Anything else, just holler at me, and I'm sure we'll figure it out. Okay, so what's today's agenda? Firstly, 1.21 is just around the corner. I believe the first release candidate should be next week sometime. Feels like we've really sped up. We had a bit of a lull, but with Toma in charge, things have really gotten back onto that 3-month cadence, and I cannot keep up. Yeah, it feels like we only just got 1.20 out the door, but here we are. It's 1.21 time. Those RCs are coming, and the usual fun of what to expect in the release will be talked about in due course. Since the first release candidate is out, we can start talking about things like what the release highlights are and this kind of thing. We're going to talk about conferences. We're going to talk about a few community initiatives that are going on at the moment. And we're going to talk a bit about React. And there's a few other random bits and pieces that are going to get talked about as well. So events then. This is the big one. It's that time of year. We do this every year. It's the start of February is when we have most of our events, and this year is no different. So firstly, if you are going to be at DevConf in Brno in Czech Republic at the end of this month, then so will we. We have a table at DevConf, so you can come along and check out what's happening there. Ivan, I think you're kind of involved in that. Is there anything you want to add about DevConf? We got any talks going on?
We don't have talks, but we'll have full booth of people that are ready to talk about the Foreman, and we are looking forward for all that have joined us.
Superb. So do go along and check that out. I will not sadly be there for that one, but there'll be plenty of other Foreman community members and developers there, so go and check it out. Following on from that, a week later, or slightly less than a week later, we have FOSDEM on February the 2nd and 3rd. That's the weekend, Saturday, Sunday. FOSDEM, as always, is huge, but that doesn't stop us being there. We will have a shared table with Overt as usual, and we will be very, very busy. I have no doubt it is always popular at FOSDEM, but we'll have quite a few people there. So again, you want to come along, check out what's happening, have a chat. We will be there. Come and talk to us. Again, I think we have maybe one FOSDEM talk. I need to check up on that. One talk got accepted for FOSDEM, but beyond that, not a lot else. Then finally, we have Config Management Camp, which is our main sort of our flagship conference where we get quite a lot of talks. I think we have something like 10 this year because quite a few got accepted into other tracks as well as our own track. So again, the full schedule of that will be published as soon as all the speakers have confirmed that they're able to come and all the rest of it. But yes, it's going to be another busy time. We will also have a booth. There will be the usual community dinner, assuming I can actually find a restaurant that will take 30 people, but I usually succeed. So all the usual fun and games that will be happening there. That will be the biggest of the events from the Foreman perspective. And as always, following on from that, we'll have our usual hack day as well on Wednesday the 6th. So if you're interested in contributing to Foreman, or if you want to contribute to Foreman and you're not quite sure where to start, then we're going to have some starter sessions as well. We're going to have some UI focus sessions. We're going to have all the usual kind of focus groups breaking off and working on whatever it is they want to work on. It's always a productive day. And so if you want to be a part of that, you are welcome to. Just make sure to add it to your ticket when you're booking your Config Management Camp ticket. You can add the hack day on as an extra. It is free. We just do the booking so we know what to expect. So that will be fantastic, and I hope to see some of you there. Do add a night to your hotel for that one. For myself, I will also be at ChaosCon on the 1st of February, on Friday the 1st, just before FOSDEM. So if you're going along to that, then you can come find me and say hi as well. That's a metrics-focused conference, which I'm quite interested in, so I'm going to go to that. So it's busy, busy, busy. And then during all of that, we will also have the annual Foreman community survey as well. And we will, of course, be handing out barcodes and things for people to go away and fill in the survey at their leisure. It's usually a long document, you know, because we have a lot we care about. And we're very grateful to the people who fill it in. So we're just finalizing the questions for that. And then we'll have that out before conference season starts. So you can all push it and get filling in. So lots going on this time of year. Lots and lots for me to do, certainly.
I have just one update. I realized that we actually have a couple of talks on DevConf that I have not think about first. So there is the Lukasz will talk about the performance monitoring with PCP, and the Foreman was the project that he was running it against. Then we have Adam talking about the time flow and the distributed transactions, joint talk with some JBoss folks. And there will be, as far as I know, also a Pulp workshop on writing a plugin. They might or might not, I'm not sure, but there will be Pulp folks ready to talk about that as well. So just some heads up for DevConf.
Fantastic. And we'll try and get that stuff on the forum if we can, so that you can find a single list of the talks that are coming up in the next month as soon as we can get all that data together. But there's just so much going on, it's hard to keep track of. Okay, a few things that Lukasz wanted me to bring up, but he couldn't be here, so he asked me to do it. Firstly, one of our UI team, Teresa, is leading an effort to revamp our website, which has not really had much love in the last few years. And whilst it does its job, we believe it could do its job better. And so we are leading a project to redesign the website. And so that's kind of kicked off. We're getting ideas together. She's done a little game for you to play in terms of how to group different parts of the website together. And you can find the sort of landing page for that on the first of those two links. If you just use the forum search for web page redesign, you'll get there. And the second one is that Lukasz himself is interested in updating the Who Uses Foreman section of our website, which historically has been a case of you send us a note and we add it, and then it never gets verified ever again, right? So we're trying to just refresh that data and find out who are the notable names out there that use Foreman. So if you're interested in being on the I Use Foreman page, then do get in touch with Lukasz. Again, if you search the forum and or go straight to the link in the slides there, then you'll be able to get to that. And finally, I didn't get this one onto the slides, unfortunately, but Toma points out that we have a proposal to remove support. Do you just want to talk about this one, Toma, actually, real quick? The thing you want to bring up?
Yeah, that's actually what I was planning to talk about.
Okay, so you just wanted to add the link to the slides, right? Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you can mention it in your section then, which we're on to anyway. So go.
Okay, so I also opened the proposal on my screen share, so if you want to.
Yep, done.
Yeah, okay. So basically, about 3 months ago, I proposed dropping some settings from Foreman. These are locations enabled, organizations enabled, and logging. If you're on 120, you didn't enable these settings, then you already have noticed the notification telling you that those settings are going away. Basically, the thinking behind this is they require a lot of code to handle all sorts of different cases, and there's very little value in that. So basically, starting with 121, these settings will always be enabled, and there's no way to turn them off. Or if you don't have locations or organizations enabled yet, there will be a migration that will automatically create default ones for you and migrate all of your resources into them, so the usage wouldn't be any different. And login, well, if you manage your infrastructure with Foreman, it's a good idea to use at least login to the site, so unauthorized users can't mess with your servers. That's it. The code itself is gradually being cleaned up, but 121 will already have these settings removed and enabled for everyone. That's it. If you want to have any comments or discussions on this, you're welcome to go to the thread on Discourse and comment there.
Although it's worth mentioning, it's a bit late because we've already merged it. But there are other areas where we can make significant improvements in terms of complexity versus options for users, right? I know one thing we're talking about is the unattended setting as well, which allows you to disable most of the provisioning. And that is something we talked about towards the end of last year about whether we need to support that. And in fact, I think that's going to be on the survey. So if the unattended flag is important to you, then you definitely want to fill out the survey this year, because that's going to be used to make some decisions. Okay, so thanks, Toma. We'll move on to Ivan, who wants to give us some Rex updates, I think.
Hello, let me share my screen.
Brilliant.
Sharing it is. So related to disabling some options that so Tomer mentioned some, and the reasoning was that there were some multiple paths in the code that one could run based on the options. And what I want to mention that we went through similar discussion in remote execution, where we had a setting for enabling running remote execution without a proxy, which meant that the main web server was actually doing the SSH connections. And this was possible to do, but it was not very well tested and not used by default by the installer or by the developers. And we just were hitting into issues where this option was not working because nobody or majority was not using it until the first user that give it a try. So we decided that we'll drop this option moving forward, and as we are not enabling that in production by default anyway, and we are not recommending that, it will just go away in 1.21. So if you want to play the game, like notice the change, I can do these switches, and you can see that in this place there is the fallback without proxy, that in the new version is not there anymore. So if you were searching for that, it's not there, it's not your fault. And if you were using that, you should spin out the smart proxy with remote execution capability and set it up so that it still works for you. And the best and recommended option is using the installer for that will do everything for you. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. And the second one that actually will show some feature or is the ability to show the raw output of some job. So when I triggered some job here, and when I go to the API of this thing, and I go to the job invocations with the ID and the specific host ID. I used to have just this quite verbose output of like what was the output of the command, and it's split based on chunks. We are like, this is useful for showing up in the web UI so that we can do live updates incrementally and so on, and you can also know like in which timestamps the output was generated. But if you are just interested into the raw output of the whole thing, this API is not very useful. That's why we introduced a new endpoint called, so you just put raw after that, and you will see a different version of the API where the output is in one string chunk, and you can do something like showing raw format for output, and this is the way how you can get just the raw output of the job that was executed. So this might be useful for automating some things and getting the output out of the Foreman remote execution. The documentation is available in the standard places. So if I go to the API doc page, and you would find it by yourself. I already have this in history, so you can also see what are the options. Like, we don't have much options there. So that's pretty much it from this feature.
Super. That's really nice. I have to say the dropping the proxy thing, history repeats itself, right? I remember we did this, Foreman 1.0 1, I think, was the version that stopped you allowing to do like running the Puppet Master on the same box as Foreman without a proxy to do like the class scanning and yes, just the exact same problem, right? Where we had all these ways of either going through a proxy or doing it directly on the same box as Foreman, and it just would break horribly, and so we stopped and made everything go through the proxy. And now I'm watching you and I'm like, yep, that sounds familiar. So you know, it's nice to know that we were right back then, and we are still right now that this is the way to do it, right? Okay, so let's move on. We're going to have a new presenter today. We've got Gilad, who's going to talk to us about a couple of things, which I think are both React related, right? Gilad, you there? You're muted at the moment, by the way. You'll need to unmute. I can only.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, no, I can hear you. There you go. I can only mute you. I can't unmute you. So.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So this is React.
So it is React related.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about 2 new features I wrote. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. So I'll start with the div view. I'll actually start by showing you the old one. You're seeing my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see that.
So as you can see, this is the old one. You can barely see the difference between the 2 versions, and you can only see it in a unified view. So I did some research, search for packages that related to React, and this is the new one. It's called React Div View, and it's great because it supports both unified view and split view, which is actually now the default view type. It has great spacing and borders between the lines, and of course, it has the GitHub colors, which we all love. So it's pretty easy to find your way around here. This is the unified view. This is the split view. So right now we're in the audits table, which is actually the first place we wanted to implement the new div view. Initially, we had a problem because the audits table gives you an old text and a new text. And the new component actually could only receive a git diff patch. So I had to write a new component which can receive either a git diff patch or an old and new text. So fortunately, now the components, they support both of those props. So this is the audits table. We also can see the new div view in the config report. This is an example for it. It opens a modal. Again, great colors, great spacing, way more easier to spot the differences. And the final place we're going to see the new div view is in the new editor, which is a work in progress PR right now, which I'm also working on. And that's it. This is the div view. Any questions about it?
Not so much questions, but that is lovely. That is really
yeah,
good.
it does look better. Yes.
There's not much else to say, right? It's just clearly an improvement. So
yeah,
particularly getting that in the config management reports is really, really powerful. Like,
yeah,
you know, I appreciate testing things in places like audits where it's not, you know, so bad if it doesn't quite work or whatever. But here, this is going to be really powerful for people. So yeah,
great.
I really like that.
Okay, so the second feature I wrote is actually a different repository which we're using. It's a generator for React components. So let me go quickly through the README. This generator helps you create connected React components with domain file structure. So it basically means that all the components files, Redux-related files, CSS files, it's all stored in one folder. This is the tree output of the new component, which is generated. Basically, the goal of this generator was to save time and reduce boilerplate. I mean, I noticed for myself, and I think for others as well. Every time I need to create a new component, I'm either copy-pasting and refactoring or writing it from scratch, which takes time and energy. So I thought about writing this generator. So this is how you install it. You can give it an option for Redux to create Redux-related files. The template of the tests are using an external package called React Redux Test Utils, which Avi actually wrote. Avi, you want to talk about it a little bit? Avi here?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the motivation behind the React Redux Test Utils was to reduce the boilerplate we have in each test. We find out that almost all our test files look similar to each other. All our action testing, all our component testing, all our reducer testing, they're all similar. So we started to develop a data-driven testing approach when instead writing logic that testing our code, we supply an object to some kind of test util, test helper, some kind of library, and this library will run the logic to test your component, your reducer, actions, whatever, for you. So the big change is you stop writing logic, you define objects, which is much easier.
Yeah, so the template files of the tests are really short and easy to read and very easy to understand. This is the config of the generator. This file is in gitignore, so it will create a file in your workspace the first time you're running the generator. I'll soon demonstrate it. And the cool thing about the generator is that you can replace the templates. I wrote pre-written templates for these files, but you can replace each and every one of them. So if you're working on a different project or a different repository, you can write templates for those files and you can receive your own templates. And each of those templates receive 3 variables. The name of the component, which is Pascal cased, name upper, which is uppercased, and name lower, which is camel cased. So let's demonstrate it. Here I'm in the root directory of Foreman. Right before this, I'll show you that we have a README file for adding new components in Foreman. So I added this paragraph right here. This is the line that actually installs the generator. And this is the commands. So let's use this command for creating component. So the first thing is it asks you is for the path of the components. So in Foreman, let me copy it real quickly. Copy the relative path. And the name. So let's call it new component. So you can see it create all these files and then installing the required packages. The only required package right now is the test util, which Avi talked about. So we'll let it finish. Okay, we're done. So let's go to the editor. Search for the new file. Okay, this is the new folder we created. As you can see, we have the name of the new component with prop types, default props. Pretty cool templates right here. I'm not going to go through each and every template, but feel free to give feedback about them. I mean, I'm sure they can be improved. Every template can be, I'm sure it can be improved. So let's try to override the template. So as you can see, the generator created a file called urc.json. The only fee right now is the deps install. It means that it installed the dependencies, so it won't install it again when you run the component again. So we can see in the README of the generator, you can put a template path field. So let's put templates here. So let's make a directory called templates. And let's create a file. Let's say we want to override helper.js. Okay. Let's see if we can find this file. Yes. Let's just put it for demonstration. Helper.js demonstration. Okay. Now let's run the generator again. I'll just give it the path real quick. You can also put it in the config later. It will ask you each time if you don't put it. Give it the name, override. Let's go to override helper. There it is. You can see our new overridden template. It's really easy to use, and I'm sure it helped me, and I very hope it will help you as well. And that's it.
Superb. We do have a few questions for you from chat.
Yeah.
Marek's been busy. So his main question is to do with sort of integrating this with Foreman itself. Does it make sense to have, for example, he's got a few questions. So you mentioned the config file for the paths. Presumably, it would make sense to have. I mean, I appreciate this tool as a generic tool, but presumably we could distribute a config file that's ready to go with like all the appropriate relative paths and so on, so people can just drop that straight into their Foreman development tree and get started making components, right?
I mean, it's a generic generator. I mean,
right, but what I'm saying is the config file that would be specific to Foreman could be distributed.
Yeah, I can create
Foreman,
one.
Right? Sure. You could distribute one with Foreman, and then so if I understand you right, you're running the npm commands from the Foreman source code, right? And the config file lives within Foreman, right? It doesn't live in the generic tool, right? So you could easily add a default one to the Foreman source code, right? That people could use, and then they don't have to go thinking about that, because every time you add one extra thing where people have to open the editor and go and copy paths back and forth, they're just going to stop. You'll lose like 25% of your users right there. So if you provide like a working sane set of defaults, then that doesn't happen, right?
I can't remember right now. I think we had a problem back in, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a problem with keeping the config file not getting ignored. I mean, when I think about it, having an initial one, like you said, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. There's implementation details, but in general, same defaults that people can just copy and use would make sense, right? So.
Yes.
And the other question that Marek had was about having this added to. Does it make sense to add the shortcuts or something similar to this as like a rake task within the Foreman source code, right? So that people can just do rake, generate component, or whatever, and actually what it's doing is calling your tools with appropriate config on the back end. Do you think that would make sense? Is it worth doing?
You mean instead of doing it inside NPM? I mean,
I assume that the rake task would probably end up just calling NPM anyway. But again, it's about reducing that friction, right, and learning less tools. Let's see.
I think that you have a good config. I mean, you only need to write the name of the component and if it's connected to Redux or not. So I do agree that we maybe need to create a default config, which can make the process easier. But a rake task seems
overkill.
I don't know if it's needed for this.
Yep. I think we at least need some documentation.
Do we want an alias, or we want the people to use the real tool?
Right, exactly. Well, that's all it would be, right? So yeah, I don't know. I'm just relaying questions here, right? So, but yeah, it's fair enough. Not every question's answer should be yeah, sure, that's a good idea, right? So,
I just want to comment that, or at least like what I see, what the need for rake task is, or something is just where the average Foreman developer will learn about possibility to use this tool. So like and that also points to the same defaults then. So maybe like as a start, I don't know if we have mentioned this in some like developer notes for developing JavaScript code in the Foreman or something like that. That could be helpful.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, certainly if we're going to adopt this as a widespread tool for the community, then we'll need some docs, maybe a post on the forum, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks pretty cool.
I think I'll open a thread in the community. Yeah.
Sounds good. Assuming the forum actually stays up long enough for you to finish writing it, I'm really sorry about that. It's a total pain. Well, okay, so Marek's just replied saying basically, yeah, he's agreeing that yeah, using the real thing makes sense. It's just that if you don't know it exists, then like for example, we use pry and it's in the developer dependencies, right? So it's definitely there, and we can talk about it in our documentation, and so on. So maybe adding this to the developer dependencies and then getting it into the documentation probably makes sense. In the same way that people don't know about other tools that we have available as well. So just making that kind of experience of being a Foreman developer smoother. Is really, I think, what Marek's trying to get at.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is, the generator is installed globally, so it's not in the developer dependencies.
Right. Okay.
Can you pin a thread in? I don't know. We don't have a JavaScript form, right? It's just for development.
I mean, you could tag it. You can if you don't have the rights to create tags, then there are plenty of people who do. Yeah, I think you have to be trust level 2 on the forum to make new tags. But we can tag if you want, or if it makes sense to have sub forums, we can add them. But generally that's not a great idea. Like, there's a really nice quote from the discourse developer that says, how does it go? It says 4 walls makes a house, 30 walls makes a maze. I'm like, that's a really nice phrase, because too many categories is impossible to navigate. So yeah, tags are probably the way I would recommend if you want to do some UI specific or technology specific tags within the development forum. That seems like the right way to go for me. And if you don't have the rights, then let me or one of the other mods know, and we can sort that out for you.
Okay, great.
Let's have a discussion about it. But yeah, I can certainly see that if it's globally installed, that complicates things, right? So yeah, we'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've exhausted. I think we've exhausted most of the content for today. So that just leaves me to wrap up. So thanks very much for watching. As ever, there are the usual places to go find us if you want to follow along and get notifications about future content. I will just end with an apology about the forum again. It is a real pain in the neck at the moment. We are undergoing a huge amount of spam, which is causing massive load on the API, and therefore the server keeps falling over. I am trying to get it upgraded. I hope for it to be stable again within the next few days, but there's not a lot I can do about it right now. So just bear with us. It will return to normal, I promise. Right. With that, thank you all very much for watching. Thanks to all the presenters today, and do take care.